Welcome back, my lovely calamities, to the realm of captivating tales on this channel. Here we delve into the depths of history, true crime, and beyond. We explore the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. As we embark upon a new year, we have a fresh array of stories to unravel. Today we shall plunge into the truth behind the enigmatic events that unfolded in Ocoee, Florida. Brace yourselves for yet another tragic chapter in history, which occurred on November 2nd, 1920. And before we comment, make sure to subscribe to the channel to show your support. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, ensuring that you never miss any of the captivating content I share here. The Ocoee Massacre, known as the most brutal day in modern American political history, marked a violent race riot that erupted on November 2nd, 1920. The city of Ocoee, located in Orange County, Florida, witnessed the horrifying destruction of African American owned buildings and homes reduced to ashes. The aftermath of the riot saw African Americans who were not direct victims being forcibly driven out or coerced to leave due to threats. Tragically, 18 black families in Ocoee lost a staggering 330 acres of land and 48 city lots. Fast forward to 2001, tax officials estimated the value of the lost land, excluding the buildings constructed on it, to be over $4.2 million, as reported by the APE. Ocoee, once a diverse community, transformed into an all-white town and remained so for a staggering 61 years until 1981. Ocoee, a town established in the 1850s, originally served as a camp for laborers who toiled on the farms surrounding Lake Apopka's southern shores. By 1920, the population had grown to just over 1,000 residents, with nearly half of them being African Americans. Ocoee witnessed the emergence of two distinct black communities. The southern community, referred to as the Baptist Quarters, flourished around the Friendship Baptist Church, which was established in 1896. On the other hand, the northern community, known as the Methodist Quarters, centered around the Ocoee African Methodist Episcopal Church, which held its inaugural services in 1890. Julius July Perry, a highly respected figure in the northern black community, held significant roles as a deacon in the church and a local labor leader. His influence was such that anyone looking to hire black laborers had to consult him first. Perry, a revered civil rights advocate, actively encouraged young black individuals to pursue education and assert themselves as equal citizens. Norman, on the other hand, was widely recognized as a prosperous man. Alongside his wife Eliza, he owned a sprawling 100-acre family orange grove. Despite being offered a substantial sum of $10,000 for his groves, a considerable amount for that era, Norman steadfastly refused to sell. Initially, Orange County, like the rest of Florida, was predominantly controlled by Southern white Democrats. However, in the lead up to the 1920 presidential election, African Americans across the South began registering to vote in unprecedented numbers. Judge John Moses Chaney, a Republican candidate for the Florida Senate, spearheaded a voter registration campaign specifically targeting African Americans in the state. July Perry and Mose Norman took charge of the local voter registration efforts in Orange County, even going as far as paying the poll tax for those who couldn't afford it. However, the mass registration coincided with the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan in the early 20th century, creating a tense atmosphere of racial and political tension. Just before the election, the Klan sent menacing letters to Chaney and other Republican leaders, demanding that they halt the voter registration campaign or face severe consequences. In an effort to intimidate black voters, the Ku Klux Klan organized rallies in cities like Orlando, Daytona, Miami, and Jacksonville. On the eve of the election, the Klan took to the streets of Ocoee, parading with their robes and crosses, instilling fear in the hearts of the two black communities. Through megaphones, they brazenly declared that no African American would be allowed to vote, warning of dire repercussions for those who dared to defy them. When Election Day arrived, African Americans faced resistance from the white community as they tried to exercise their right to vote. Black voters were either turned away through threats of violence or encountered poll workers who conveniently claimed their names were missing from the registration rolls. Deterred by these obstacles, Mose Norman refused to be silenced. Despite being denied the opportunity to cast his vote, Norman made his way to Orlando seeking guidance from Judge Cheney. The wise judge informed him that interfering with the voting process was illegal and instructed him to document the names of all African Americans who were denied their constitutional rights, as well as the names of the white individuals who were violating those rights. Upon his return to Ocoee, Norman brought back a group of black citizens who were determined to exercise their right to vote. Despite their persistence, they were once again met with forceful rejection. Frustrated, Norman demanded to know the names of the poll workers and boldly declared, "We will vote by God." In that moment, Norman possessed a loaded shotgun, either on his person or in his car, which escalated the situation into a heated altercation. Unfortunately, he was overpowered and beaten with the butt of his own gun before being driven away by the white individuals. As news of the incident spread, the white community began to gather and form a mob, parading through the streets with increasing disorder and unruliness. Witnessing this, the remaining African Americans who had hoped to vote decided to abandon their efforts and left the polling place. Later that evening, Sam Salisbury, a prominent white figure in the town and former chief of police, was called upon to lead a lynch mob in search of Mose Norman with the intention to find and punish him. The mob, consisting of approximately 100 men, marched towards Norman's home. However, they were informed along the way that Norman had been seen visiting the residence of July Perry. The mob redirected their path towards Perry's house, demanding the surrender of both Perry and Norman. Despite their demands, no response came from inside the house, prompting the mob to attempt breaking down the front door. Perry, who had been forewarned about the mob, resorted to firing gunshots from within his home in an act of self-defense. The Perry family displayed immense bravery as they valiantly defended their home, leading some to believe that there was a large group of armed African Americans inside. The white individuals estimated the presence of several armed individuals, while Zora Neale Hurston's account suggests that Perry stood alone in his defense. In the chaos, Sam Salisbury was shot in the arm, becoming the first white casualty of the conflict. Additionally, two of Salisbury's men lost their lives when they attempted to storm the house by forcefully kicking in the back door. Their bodies would later be discovered in the backyard hours after the violent encounter. Defeated and outnumbered, the mob reluctantly retreated to regroup and gather reinforcements from Klan members in nearby cities. In the midst of this temporary respite, the Perry family seized the opportunity to escape their besieged home. Despite Perry's serious injuries, he managed to flee with the assistance of his wife, seeking refuge in a nearby sugarcane patch. Meanwhile, their daughter, Coretha, bravely remained behind to tend to her own wounds, while their two young sons sought shelter in the safety of the barn. The arrival of approximately 50 cars filled with Klan members from Winter Garden, Orlando, and Sanford further escalated the tension in Ocoee. Discovering only Coretha, a relentless manhunt ensued, leading to Perry's eventual capture by the white mob at daybreak. He was promptly arrested and transported to Orlando General Hospital on Cole Avenue for treatment of his gunshot wound. However, Perry's freedom was short-lived as he was soon released into the custody of the sheriff and taken to the jail in Orlando, likely located near the old courthouse at Central and Magnolia. The jail became the target of a vengeful lynch mob, to which Sheriff Frank Gordon reluctantly surrendered the keys to Perry's cell. Without hesitation, they seized Perry and subjected him to a brutal beating. Dragged through the streets behind a car, his battered body finally arrived at the entrance of Orlando Country Club near Lake Concord, where Judge Cheney's residence stood. In a horrifying display of hatred and violence, the mob hung the barely alive Perry from a telephone pole along the highway. His lifeless body became a canvas for bullets, leaving a chilling message for both Judge Cheney and the African American community. This is the fate that awaits those who dare to exercise their right to vote. In due time, Perry met his tragic end at the hands of the Black Undertaker, Edward Stone, despite the disapproval of the Ku Klux Klan. Stone's actions were met with threats from the Klan. Perry was laid to rest in the black section of Greenwood Cemetery located south of Orlando. However, his grave remained unmarked until November 2002 when a movement emerged to locate his final resting place and honor him with a headstone. During this time, a local photographer captured images of Perry and sold them for a mere 25 cents each. These photographs were displayed in several stores, proudly exhibited in their windows. Shockingly, the men responsible for Perry's death were never apprehended. Perry's wife and daughter, who miraculously survived the massacre, were sent to Tampa for both medical treatment and to ensure their safety and peace. Following Perry's lynching, the white mob's thirst for vengeance extended to the entire African-American Ocoee community. The mob laid siege to the northern Ocoee black community, engulfing it in terror. The mob set fire to rows of African-American homes, forcing those inside to flee and face the wrath of the white mob's bullets. The devastating result was the destruction of at least 20 buildings, including every African-American church, schoolhouse, and lodge room in the vicinity. In a courageous act of self-defense, African-American residents engaged in a gunfight that lasted well into the evening, persisting until the early hours of the morning, with firearms later discovered amidst the ruins once the massacre had ceased. However, the residents were eventually driven into the nearby orange groves and swamps, forced to retreat until they were completely expelled from the town. The tragic events of the Ocoee siege left a devastating impact on the African American community. Lang Maid, a skilled carpenter, suffered a brutal assault and was castrated. The heart-wrenching story of Maggie Ginlack and her pregnant daughter unfolded as they tragically lost their lives while seeking refuge in their home, only to be discovered partially burned beneath it. Roosevelt Barton, who sought shelter in July Perry's barn, faced a harrowing fate when the mob set fire to the barn and forced him to flee, ultimately leading to his shooting. Hattie Smith, visiting her pregnant sister-in-law, experienced a terrifying ordeal when her sister-in-law's home was set ablaze. Although Smith managed to escape, her sister-in-law's family perished while desperately waiting for help that never arrived. The African-American residents of the Baptist quarters in southern Ocoee, while not directly targeted in the massacre, faced subsequent threats that forced them to leave. Jay Hammer, a courageous African-American woman residing in southern Ocoee, suspected that the massacre was a calculated plan to seize the prosperous homes of African Americans without any compensation. As according to Hamilton, those in the South were coerced with the horrifying prospect of being shot or burned if they refused to sell out and leave. As a result, approximately 500 African Americans were forcibly driven out of Ocoee, transforming it into an almost entirely white town. So, the white citizens of Ocoee later had to undertake the laborious task of harvesting the citrus crop themselves due to the absence of African American workers. Walter White, the prominent civil rights activist for African Americans, arrived in Orange County shortly after the incident took place. With his fair complexion, characterized by blonde hair and blue eyes, White cleverly disguised himself as a white northerner interested in purchasing Orange Grove property. His aim was to gather information and uncover the truth. To his dismay, he discovered that the white community in Orange County was still reveling in their triumph. Engaging in conversations with a local real estate agent and a taxi cab driver, White unearthed the horrifying fact approximately 56 African Americans had lost their lives in the massacre. The true number of casualties remain uncertain due to the gruesome nature of some victims being burned beyond recognition. Furthermore, White learned that the massacre may have been fueled by the white community's envy towards prosperous African American landowners such as Mose Norman and July Perry. Remarkably, Mose Norman managed to escape the massacre unscathed. However, he made the decision never to return to Florida. After bidding farewell to his friends in Apopka and Stuckey on November 3rd or 4th of 1920, he embarked on a journey to New York City, presumably accompanied by his wife. and was in the bustling city that he spent the remainder of his days until his passing in 1949. For nearly a whole week following the event, the Ku Klux Klan troops established a complete blockade around the town. No one was allowed to enter or exit without their explicit permission. Their main objective was to prevent the African Americans, who were now homeless, from entering Orlando to the east and Winter Garden to the west. Unfortunately, the black population of Ocoee who owned their own land were never able to return to their properties. Those who were fortunate enough to receive any compensation were coerced into selling their land for a mere fraction of its actual value. In a matter of weeks, only 2 African Americans remained in the town. Shockingly, by the time the 1930 census was conducted, there were no African Americans left in Ocoee. In fact, for a staggering 60 years until 1981, not a single African American had the courage to reside in Ocoee. It wasn't until 1986 that the city finally hired its first black employee. Furthermore, for a period of 18 years following the horrific massacre of 1920, not a single black vote was cast in all of Orange County. And there you have it, yet another forgotten historical tragedy that has been conveniently swept under the rug. It is my sincere hope that shedding light on these events will serve as a wake-up call to the world, urging us to embrace the truth instead of perpetuating silence and falsehoods simply because the reality is too horrifying to face. As inhabitants of America, the land of the free, it is disheartening to acknowledge that it can also be a breeding ground for deception, where lies are fabricated to conceal the unsightly truth. I truly hope you found this account intriguing, and I eagerly await hearing your thoughts on the Ocoee Massacre. Until we meet again, take good care of yourself